Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
It is wonderful to be back here with you all today. Although Harlem Voices, the musical you will hear selections from today, is about the many faces of oppression, it's also about the many faces of those who overcome oppression. Lynchings in the United States were more frequent from 1890 to the 1920s. Lynchings were often large mob actions attended by hundreds or thousands of watchers. As in the case of L. Parsons, they were sometimes announced in advance in newspapers. And on one instance, Fred Rochelle, with a special train. The lynching of Michael Donald in Mobile, Alabama, on March 21st, 1981, was one of the last lynchings in the United States. Several KKK members beat and killed Michael, a 19-year-old African-American, and hung his body from a tree. For one of my classes at Starr King Seminary here in Berkeley, I read an eye-opening book called My Grandmother's Hands by Rizma Menachem. He wrote that trauma like that linked to racial and environmental experiences is compounding, and that it can be transmitted through DNA. Menachem wrote that, quote, recent work in genetics has revealed that trauma can change the expression of the DNA in our cells. And these changes can be passed from parent to child. And it gets weirder. We now have evidence that memories connected to painful events also get passed down from parent to child, and to that child's child. What's more, these experiences appear to be held, passed on, and inherited in the body, not just the thinking brain. End quote. So those paragraphs describing inherited trauma are among some of the most chilling that I've ever read. However, they instantly explained a mystery that has long puzzled me. I remember being in the Deep South in the early 1960s with my extended family. I remember being there, and we would play records like Chubby Checkers Twist and learn dances together in Foul River outside of Mobile, Alabama at night. And that was a place where only black people lived in houses strewn along dirt roads. And there, among the moss-laden magnolia trees and pine, in the humid nights with cicada drowning every other sound save frogs, and in the deepest shadows, I was afraid. I was afraid of men in sheets that could descend upon my aunt's house at any moment for some inexplicable reason or trivial slight and kill us. I don't recall anyone ever telling me about the KKK at that time, but I am not certain where that fear came from. So seeing pictures of lynchings of black people from the 1920s even now fills me with an understanding of the events that seems to come from my bones. Menachem offered me an explanation about that profound trauma response I have to pictures and stories, that the feelings and images may have been stored in my body, passed down from generations of people who survived those times. And so I stand here before you today to tell you that writing the story and composing the music of Harlem Voices felt more like a memory to me than something that just sprang from my intellect. Harlem Voices is about people living in New York and working at a segregated nightclub, how they navigated the racism of their time and place. I set this musical in that time because there are so many parallels to this time that we're living in now, with racial violence on the rise, white supremacy rearing its ugly head, and even finding a voice in the highest places in our government. The first song you heard for the prelude to this service is from Act 1, Scene 3 of Harlem Voices. It's called Night They Burned Rosewood. It's sung by Janet Bell Carter, the female lead. Her mother, sister, and uncle were killed in the January 1st through 7th, 1923 attack by the KKK on the Black Enclave of Rosewood, Florida. In 7 nights of that rampage, which actually did happen, the KKK burned the town completely to the ground and killed approximately 150 of its inhabitants. In my story, Bell's brother, Evan, who was a World War I vet, was able to keep the KKK from storming their house long enough for her to get 10 children and herself to safety. So after having escaped to New York, Bell and her brother were talking to their Aunt Agnes when she asked Bell, what was it like having to leave everything you knew back there in Rosewood? So Bell stood up on the couch where she had been sitting and walked to the window, and she looked out onto the street for a moment. She turned around to face Agnes and Evan, and she sang what you heard, The Night They Burned Rosewood. Before we go farther, I must thank all of the amazing people in this congregation who have been so enthusiastic about bringing this music to you. In August, right after I finished Harlem Voices, I told Dr. Susan Mashiyama about it, and she was an instant fan. It's been principally her guidance and leadership of the many remarkable musicians you will see and hear today that has brought this music to life, much of it for the first time on this planet. And also I want to thank Joanne Foley, who came up with this idea. It's like, why don't we make this a music service? So just one note about the performances. Yes, the musical was written for a black cast. And someday it would be wonderful to see it fully staged by a black cast. That said, my intention in writing Harlem Voices was to portray the story of African Americans in this country in a way that is respectful, historically accurate, and authentic. There are legitimate questions about how art is misappropriated, and I understand that. But I want to tell you that I consider my music to deal with topics of universal human concern. So if anyone ever asks you, tell them you heard me say, I don't care about the race or ethnicity of anyone who sings my music. As long as they have a heart in their chest and they own what they're singing from their particular, unique perspective. Or as we like to say at Star King, their intersectionality. And normally I'm here at this congregation preaching sermons. And it was this congregation's idea for us to have a service where my music takes the place of a sermon. And that's just fine with me. So today I'll take you on a tour through Harlem Voices world, introducing each one of the pieces for a few moments and setting the scene for you. I invite you to listen to this music with your minds and ears, and to hear it and experience it with your hearts. I hope you enjoy this music of struggle, liberation,